I have a message to the internet today. You know, one of the reasons why I love doing this, I really love it, to go over into my console and just, it's not the Vim Doppler thing, but curl. Hold on, let me, Luke.
Reality, unfortunately. But I will say, like, I did notice, like, in the past 5 years or so, like, people are pushing it.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. What he found and everything, and he put together on this. Now I've got a system that's probably much more powerful than Luke's, but I don't like wasting resources. You know, I like to optimize my system and everything, and so curl wwtr.in. And the reason that I love doing this, why is it doing that? What? And I love doing this sort of thing is that is extremely low and very undemanding on my system. And why is it that it is this way? You know, when was curl introduced? Curl invented when? When did that piece of software come out? It was released in 1998, but it started in 1996 and to power an IRC bot that fetched currency array exchange rates from websites. The tool involved, evolved from earlier versions, HTTP GET and URL GET, before being named curl CURL client URL in 1998, and according to the curl project history. So this came out in the 90s, and this is a very, old piece of software at this point. But if you know about life in 1998 and what it was like on computers, well, you know that we were able to buy them, and they weren't, you would pretty much expect them to be in most people's places in 1998, but they wouldn't be very powerful systems, and a person who was writing a piece of software for that time period would probably be thinking a lot about how is it that I can write this piece of software so that it is very sleek. It's written in C, so of course it's very high performance. It's very close to the hardware on this, so that there may be buffer overrun exploits and sort of things. There's a lot of flaws with C as a language, but they're not JavaScript level flaws, as far as I'm concerned. And the thing about it is that it's very highly performative, and so this was written in C, and it does its job very, very effectively, and it became something where you see people use this all the time. Really, even to this day, they still call on this piece of software to do a lot of things, and it's a very nice piece of command line software and everything, and it's a very old thing. And what gets me is that you complain about Electron, and they're like, go back to using your apps from the 90s. Yeah, I will, asshole, gladly. I won't miss the modern UI garbage and bile and trash that is developed by people like Electron devs. Good fucking riddance to you. That guy, Theo, is such a massive soy dev. How do we define a soy dev? The Silicon Valley / Seattle-based soy latte drinking hipster you see at the coffee shop coding Node.js on his MacBook Pro. He only uses a bloated IDE and is too beta to ever touch Vim. This creature will justify his use of the MacBook by saying it's Unix-based, but at the same time will defend not having a Linux machine due to some other nonsense reason. GUI everything, it makes him feel safe. number one aspiration in life is to work for Fang, and will consume any disgusting product or service they sell. You know, August became an iOS soy dev because it was hype job title rather than actually being interested in technology. So there you go. There you have it. Theo, who defends it, is a fucking soy dev to a fucking T. Electron is a piece of shit. It's insufferable. It uses a lot of RAM. It's a resource hog from hell. If it deserves a rating as far as a piece of software, then we can give it at a scale of 1 to 5. We can give it a -5. So it is not even a 0. It's below 0. I don't know how it is possible to suck this much. I award the people who write Electron apps no points, negative points. Everybody who has come across your software is now dumber for having to use your software. May God have mercy upon their souls. I have truly had and seen enough. And anyways, so why is it that old software is so much better than modern software? Well, yeah, like I said, I mean, these people back then, they wrote programs in languages like C. They went out of their way to eke out every last possible drop of performance out of their software as they possibly could, and so it ends up being pretty snappy and responsive, unlike, Electron and Discord. Now, I will say one thing about the performance and realities of loading Discord. Now, I in order to do this, want to close out a bunch of other things because, I don't want my system to crash while I'm recording, to do this, and so I'm trying to free up some memory by closing out of some stuff on the way there, to launch it, so let's get rid of Greenshot. You don't need that loaded in there. That's all stuff that can free up some resources to load it up. So here we go. Just in practice, let's find it in its little folder, Discord Inc., and launch it. Okay, so it's gonna check for the I hate this part, but let's update to the latest version of the software. Very yeah, crap. Look at this loading though. It's seriously, just to get it up and running. And then, it takes all that time just to get started on a modern, this laptop is like a 4070, it's probably a TI model, and it's an i-core, so it's mid-range, and it's that painful. And, we're going, and because I'm smart about software at the very least and selections of it, I'll go in and oh look at that, I've got the system internals, and it's replaced my task manager, so I can see more details and have greater control over things, and so I can find Discord and in this and figure out exactly how much it's costing me in terms of RAM. So yeah, there it is at the bottom. So it's expensive. It uses quite a bit of it, just right off the bat, right? It's like, what? Let's add all this up cumulatively. Let's see if we can look at this and see how much memory it's actually using, So, you're talking about 4... Nah. Quite a bit, so... and that's pretty crazy. And it's an Electron app, and it's really rather intense. And the thing is that, let's switch around in it and everything, just to be fair to it. But you see this and this. Application, it's not insufferable in terms of performance, but my input on this is that it could be better. It could be even snappier, especially if it's going to use as much RAM as it actually uses. And why it drives me crazy is that, I've only got 16 gigs to devote to things, and I may be, going in here to go down into, this part and go here, load this up, you know, and play something like this, Chained Echoes, that I'm emulating on the Torzu, you know, client and everything. And I know Nintendo hates that, but they're, see, look, out in plain view, a confession, I know, but let's, see, I've got that emulator, right? And I've got that game, and I'm trying to play it and everything, and now it's having to compete with, fucking Discord for RAM and everything, and I hate doing that, because I've played games on this damn thing before that it couldn't run because it ran out of RAM, basically, and so I wanted it to devote as many resources as it possibly could to it. I don't want to give it up to Discord to do whatever it is that Discord is trying to do. Even this is kind of making me cringe at OBS Studio, which is my primary screen grabbing software. So, this is going on, and I can see all the processes that are on my system and everything. And so it's not really that Discord and an Electron app is slow. It's that it tends to eat up way too many resources in terms of RAM utilization that drives me crazy. And so why is it that old software was better? Well, because it wouldn't do something like this. It would try to conserve, the memory on people's system. It would try not to be a big hit to it. It would try not to use as much of it. So in this way and in this regard, software has only gone downhill, and modern software can't hold a candle to the flame of old software. So when somebody says, "See, go back to your 1970s technology," it's just like, you're funny. You actually think that we want your modern crap and envy it in any way, or would feel at all bad about going back to it? Nah, fuck modern software. As far as I wanted to say about this, reject modernity, reject tradition too while we're at it. It's a bunch of bullshit it's the tradition is nothing more than the dead hand of the past desperately clinging to the modern era. I'm not that guy, I'm not that person pushing for that, but embrace old software. People wrote it in a sane fashion. They didn't use JavaScript to develop it. They didn't use Python either. They used a good, proper programming language like Curl does with C. And that's why older software, kicks the shit out of modern software and can't hold a candle to the flame of it. So reject modern software and embrace old software, because old software beats the shit out of modern.